This is a true story. And an amazing story about learning to read. So I learned to read. I mean, I knew how to read,
Right.
but I was not a wizard. I was a math guy in high school, and I got all 800s on those college boards in math. But my English college boards were lousy. They were awful because then anyway they were a vocabulary test, and the way to get a vocabulary is to read, and I didn't read. So I got 540 or something like that my junior year, and 570. I remember these numbers because they were so awful, and then I did okay my freshman year, but I noticed that all these kids from all these prep schools, often Saint something or other, and then I noticed that they all knew how to read. They read books, and the English classes that I took with them my freshman year, I would do okay reading the book that I was assigned, but they would then say something about some other book that we hadn't been assigned, and they would say it's not at all like, the sun also rises. They would say, and I would think, what? What's that all about? Because I didn't know that stuff. So when I came back to my September return for the beginning of my sophomore year, um, I decided I was going to learn to read, and I did something kind of nutty in retrospect, but felt good at the time. And at that period in our lives, there were no computers, so you would sign up for all the classes for both semesters by letters. And so I had 5 classes I was going to take the first semester of my sophomore year, and 5 I'd already signed up for the second semester. And I told my roommates, who were my friends, that I was not going to class. Period. Not at all. I was never going to go to class. That first semester, it turned out I did it both semesters. I didn't go to class. I didn't take tests. I didn't do anything. I just went to the bookstore and bought books and read them. And I'd read 3 or 4 books a day. And at the end of the 2 semesters, I had read probably 400 books. I don't know, a lot. I can remember many of them. I read all of Hemingway, all of F. Scott Fitzgerald. I read Camus. I read stuff. I read a little bit of history, but not mostly. Most I read fiction, I think. And at the end of the 2 semesters, I had not done so well because I never went to class or never took an exam. I never showed up. And for the 2 semesters, I had 4 Fs, 2Ds, and 4Cs.
How'd you even get a C if you weren't going to class?
Interesting question. Don't know. Didn't care. If I'd have gotten 10 Fs, it made no difference to me. I was in it for the reading. It didn't matter to me. And I didn't think of the consequences. I didn't think about anything. All I did was read. And my roommates would come back and they'd say, "What did you do?" And I'd say, "I read this, I read this, I read that." We talk about books. They're all one is dead now, but the others are still friends. And I was getting ready to go home, and the phone rings in our little place that we lived in, Saybrook College on Elm Street, and it was a dean, and he said, or, "Yeah, it was a dean. It was his. It was the dean, a dean," and he said, "Mr. Gold." So you don't want to hear Mr. Gold when you're 19 or whatever I was. He said, "Could you come see me?" So I went up the hill to the dean's office. I'd never been up there. I wasn't even really nervous exactly. I just, I was going to go home. It was okay. So I go in, and he's got the 2 folders in front of him. The one from my freshman year that had all A's and B's, and the one from my sophomore year that for 2 semesters had 4 F's, 2D's, and 4C's. And he asked me what happened, because he noticed. Somebody noticed, and he put them on his desk. And I said, "What I just told you?" I just told him the same story. And he looked at me and he said, "So what did you read?" And and uh, and I told him. We talked about books for an hour, and then I saw him write something in my folder. And he said, "Sounds like you had a perfect sophomore year. See you next fall."